today I'm here with GQ to answer some burning questions about how my production skills developed during the shooting of my new film, Rendered. Let's begin. Okay, so we have our first question, which is where did you stand before your final project and preliminaries? Okay, so I had actually never done anything media related. I had never really participated in taking pictures or doing any sort of videography. I had taken pictures of family members and in general, but never did it in a formal setting. And in terms of videography, I had zero experience. I had never even done any sort of editing. I didn't even ever use CapCut. So I really did lack a lot of experience in terms of that. Apart from that, the only thing that I did have some experience in was story writing, and that's because I used to write stories from a very young age. I started writing stories when I was 13, so I did have a bit of know-how on how to write stories. So yeah, that's where I stood before I worked on my skills through preliminaries. How did the preliminaries help you with development of your skills? Okay, so when it came to doing the preliminaries, the first preliminary I did was done as a class assignment, and it was a comedy sequence that I had to do in 30 minutes. So I teamed up with three other people and we began shooting. So one of the major things this preliminary taught me was improvising. I only had 30 minutes. I needed to make use of what we had. I played the role of a director and it gave me a lot of experience in directing, and we didn't really have that much time to plan an entire script, so we just went ahead with the shooting and planned as we had a generic idea of what we were supposed to do, as it was supposed to be based on the 180 rule. Time I was working with three other people. I was working with a team, so I got the experience of how to work with actors, and we learned a lot about lighting, as we didn't really have a light either. So we went around the campus looking for a light, and we found a handheld LED light, and so we used that light to reach optimum exposure. So in general, this preliminary was an important one since it taught me how to work with actors, and it gave me my first ice-breaking experience, as you may call it. Okay, so moving on to preliminary number 2. This one was a major one, as in this preliminary I learned how to work with flashbacks, and this preliminary was pretty similar to the final project's idea, so it gave me a little know-how of how to work around with those elements. Moreover, this preliminary acted as a screen test for my actor, the one who played the lead role in Rendered. And this was the first time I was working with him. This was the first time I saw him in front of a screen. Another thing this preliminary did was that it gave me the experience of working on a professional editing software. This was the first time I edited something on a software like DaVinci Resolve. So it taught me the basic editing techniques, like how to piece sequences together, how to maintain a rapid pace of editing, how to maintain continuity, and how to stitch audios and music. So yeah, that's something that this preliminary taught me. This project gave me the confidence to work around everything myself and to have complete creative freedom over a project. So yes, this preliminary directly contributed to me learning a lot of things that helped me with my final production. My third preliminary task involved recreating the opening sequence of the film Joker. I shot this in college and casted my friend Ikram as the lead. I did his makeup to resemble the Joker. This allowed me to experiment with character transformation and the use of props and costumes to build a specific identity on screen. Through this task, I was able to further develop my camera work, particularly in framing and capturing perform. Through this task, I was able to further develop my camera work through framing and capturing performance effectively. It also helped me understand the importance of props and visuals in creating a convincing and immersive scene. However, due to time constraints, as we only had around 40 minutes to shoot this thing, um, the process felt a bit rushed. This limited the number of takes and refinements we could do, which highlighted the importance of time management and planning in filmmaking. Overall, this preliminary helped me improve my practical production skills and especially in camera and visual design, while also teaching me to work. My fourth preliminary was a prop montage. I used props similar to those in my final project to convey emotional distress and grief without a character. This helped me explore how meaning can be created through mise-en-scene alone and with objects symbolizing the protagonist's mental state. I used blue lighting to amplify the sense of emptiness, which I achieved by applying a class technique of using plastic sheets over a light source to change the color of the light. This taught me how simple lighting techniques can effectively enhance mood and atmosphere. Overall, this preliminary improved my skills in visual composition, props, and lighting, directly influencing the mise en scene in my final project. To the next question. The next question we have is, how did your story writing and planning skills develop? Okay, my story writing and planning skills developed significantly throughout the project as I learned to balance structure planning with creativity. At the start, my ideas were more basic and less organized, but as I progressed, I created a detailed planning schedule along with a recce and a budget report. So that also helped me plan out the shots in advance. Moreover, the risk assessment sheet also helped out. Um, these things helped me manage both the logistics and the creative part of my project. Um, but at the same time, I had to improvise a lot during the time of my shooting because sometimes unexpected things would happen, like in one of my scenes where there's a family portrait. I forgot to bring the picture that was supposed to be in the frame, and I had to improvise. We used a mobile phone, and shot the picture on the phone. Things like this would happen, and I would have to change my ideas and plans accordingly. In terms of writing, my use of non-linear storytelling, particularly through flashbacks, also reflects my development in story writing. And as I mentioned before, I had already done story writing before, so I had a bit of know-how on how to write stories and how to develop storylines. And this storyline was inspired by one of my paintings that I did last year, and I was very attached to that painting, so I always wanted it to be something more than just a painting. I wanted to like paint the whole thing. It's a small painting, and I wanted to paint it on a big canvas so I can put it in my room. So I always wanted that painting to be a bit more than what it was. So when I got the idea of shooting my own film, that painting just came to my mind, and I tried to change its like medium into a film. So that also helped me with the development of my storyline. Okay, the next question we have is, how did your editing skills develop and how did you refine it? Okay, so like I mentioned, I had zero experience in editing, and editing was the most difficult part of this entire project. Like, I remember at a certain point I was so lost because this was my first time using a professional software. I like this was the first time I was using these softwares. I did use DaVinci Resolve earlier in my preliminaries, but that was a short preliminary, so I didn't really have that much experience in DaVinci Resolve either. And then switching to Adobe Premiere, that was a whole new world. I struggled with such basic little things. I struggled with cropping. I didn't know what triple delete was. I didn't know how to didn't know how to write on it. I didn't know how to link and unlink audios. I didn't know anything. So as I began, I was just like, let's just begin. There's nothing else I can do, and I'm solo, so I cannot rely on anyone else either. So I began editing. I made the timeline first on DaVinci, but unfortunately, I had trouble with importing the videos, as they were in another format, HEVC format. They were shot in my friend's iPhone, and yeah, so they were not being imported. So I used a few apps to try to convert the format, but regardless, it just wasn't working out. So my teacher was like, um, try Adobe, and I did try Adobe, and thankfully I was able to import them. But now I had to deal with something completely new. So yeah, that was difficult, but as I went along, I kept learning. I would search on YouTube every little thing, how to stitch videos, how to unlink audio, how to add audios, how to just add the audio and not the video. I struggled with every little thing. It was a headache, but now I am a lot more confident in my editing skills. I honestly just learned editing through YouTube, and I relied heavily on self-learning. But every time I would struggle with something too much and I wouldn't be able to figure that out, I would reach out to my teacher and ask him to help me figure out how to do this thing. I remember I struggled a lot with applying a motion blur at the end, so I texted my teacher, how can I apply a motion blur, and he taught me how to, and he had some YouTube videos to help me out. Okay, so the next question we have is, how did you learn about lighting and its impact? Okay, so for lighting, we used to study that in class. My teacher brought in his LED lights, and he taught us how to create different effects using them. So this was done as a class activity. I learned all about lighting as a class activity. Apart from that, I learned a lot of other things in that class activity, how to reach optimum lighting, 3-point lighting, and a lot more. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So the next question we have is, how did your directing skills develop throughout the project? Okay, as I went from working in groups to managing the entire production as a solo project and independently, I learned a lot about directing. My first preliminary, I acted solely as a director, so that preliminary helped me a lot in learning about directing, since I was mainly just focused on that part of it. As I moved on to later preliminaries working independently, particularly my second task, I began to take full creative control over the project. This allowed me to make decisions, deciding the narrative, performance, and visual style in my own, which strengthened my directing skills and confidence as a director. I also learned how to guide actors more efficiently, especially during the screen test, where I had to ensure that the performance aligned with the emotional tone of the story. Throughout the project, I also developed the ability to improvise, as I mentioned, so I won't go too much into it. Additionally, my understanding of visual storytelling improved. I became more intentional with my use of camera techniques. And by the time I worked on my final project, I was able to combine all these skills at the same time learning new skills while doing the final project. But I was a lot more confident in my abilities as a director, and I was able to give more clearer instructions and be intentional with my words and camera work. So this all really did help me with my directing skills. So that was all for today. Please do go check out Rendered, and I really hope you enjoyed the film. And that's all for today. Bye.